it's Lisa. Welcome back to my channel. Today I want to show you this Dragonfly and Flowers A2 card set from the Stamps of Life. And this die set comes with many things. For one, it does come with this large die, this is the die that you have to have because it does cut an A2 size card base. So you don't need to worry about, using your cutting tool and scoring and all of that and measuring, because it cuts the actual card base for you with the score line. All you have to do is fold it. And it also comes with these dies. So this is a nice layering die that you can use for your card front, and it has the rectangle die to cut it out. It also has all of these other fun pieces. It has a Thinking of You die, which is a pretty large die, and it has the shadow layer. It has 3 dragonflies with their shadow layers, so each one is a different size. 3 flowers, and again, each one of these are a different size, and then it has 3 more smaller flowers. So I'm going to go ahead and use this die set to make a card with you today.
I'm going to show you a technique today where you can use this background die and do some ink blending on it, and you can actually use that one background that you ink blended and come up with 3 different card fronts from the one background. So let's get started. I'm going to start out by taking a piece of the white powdered sugar cardstock and making sure it's large enough to fit the large background die, because this will eventually go through the die cut machine. And I'm adding double-sided adhesive to the back of the powdered sugar cardstock and just trimming off the excess. And then I'm going to add the background die, and when I do that, I'm going to make sure that the background die is inside of the large rectangular die, and I'm going to add some washi tape to keep those together. And you want to make sure that those two are connected, one's inside of the other, so that the background will actually cut out of the cardstock and not cut into the cardstock. So here I'm doing the same thing again. So I'm adding some adhesive to the back of some powdered sugar cardstock, running it through my die cut machine again, and I actually do that 3 times because I'm making 3 cards. So here you see me just doing the third one, adding the background, went through the die cut machine, and just making sure all of those pieces are contained. If any of them came out, make sure you put them back in. Now I'm going to do some ink blending, and you can see the colors that I'm going to be using. I decided to go with the blue family, so I'm using Midnight as my first color that I laid down. That's the darkest. Then I went into the blueberry, and then the pool, and then I'll go into the ocean, and then the sea glass. And I'm just using a blending brush and blending that on the background. Now remember, this background went through the die cut machine. It does have the double-sided adhesive on the back. So I am holding it in place with my fingers because I can't tape it down to my glass mat. It just won't stick with that adhesive backing. So now I'm going to take off that background. Remember, this is sticky. I'm going to leave all of those pieces on that adhesive film. So take off the background, and I'm adding it to an A2 size card base. So there's one card. Now I'm going to make another card. I have another A2 size card base. I am using my plain white background. This one did not have any ink on it, and I'm just going to take those pieces and I am going to fill in the holes, kind of like putting a pieces in a puzzle. So just pop them in there, and then to make my third card, I'm going to do the same thing with the rest of the leftover pieces. So again, I'm going to take an A2 size card base. I'm going to peel back that white background layer. I'm going to put that on the top of a card base and finish plugging in these holes. So add all of those pieces in there. So that's why it's so important to save all your pieces. Now with this card base, it's not completely flat. Well, the other one's not completely flat either, but for this one in particular, I wanted it to be completely flat. So what I do when I'm done is I go back and I take the white sticker pieces from the white piece and I just add them back in to those holes, and then that becomes an entirely flat piece of cardstock. So you can do it either way. If you want to add the white pieces back in, or if you want to leave them out, however you want to do it, that's up to you. But this method, it actually gave me 3 different card bases to work with using one ink blending technique. Next, I'm taking the Thinking of You die and I cut a piece of the powdered sugar cardstock just large enough to fit that die, and I'm just throwing some ink on the cardstock. So I'm starting with the Midnight, and then I'm going to come in with the next darkest color, which was the Blueberry, and then I will come in with the Pool ink. And I did not have enough room for all of the inks on this piece of cardstock, but that's completely okay. As long as I'm getting some type of gradient look or ombre look on this cardstock. So I'm going to die cut that Thinking of You out of this cardstock. Now I could have die cut it out of white and then tried to put ink on the die cut words, but that would have been, I think, a little bit too thin for me to try to, the die cut might have been too thin for me to try to put some ink on there. So this is what I'm doing, and I also am going to move this over as far as I can to the right so that I can put a dragonfly on here, because I'm going to die cut a dragonfly as well. Once that comes out of the die cut machine, I did forget to put double-sided adhesive on the back of that piece. So if you are doing this, make sure you put your double-sided adhesive. So I'm adding glue and then adding it to a piece of the powdered sugar shadow layer. So I cut the shadow layer out of the powdered sugar. And I did add ink to some of these other dragonflies. You could also die cut the dragonfly dies and just add the ink with your blending brush, which I did that for a couple of them. And then the one that you saw, I actually die cut out of that paper. And here I did cut the powdered sugar with the shadow for the shadow die, and I just added glue to the center part of the dragonfly. I didn't add glue to the wings because I wanted those wings to stand up. So here I'm just adhering all of my die cuts to the front of this card. I did the 2 dragonflies and the Thinking of You with the ink blending, and that completes this first card. And for my second card, I'm going to be using the flowers that came in the set, and I die cut them out of the powdered sugar, and I'm just adding some ink. I did cut a large, a medium, and a small flower. So the large flower has the blueberry ink, then I have the medium with the pool, and then the sea glass with the smaller flower, because these are going to be layered, and I thought that it would look nice if I added some different colors to the layers. I am adding some glue to the center middle part of that flower. My glue had some rust in it from the needle that sticks in the top. That's why it's not completely white. But once those are adhered, you can just take your finger and just lift up those petals for added dimension. I also cut 4 of the smaller ones, added some ink to them, and layered those on top of each other as well. So here I'm taking my next card base, and I am going to add my Thinking of You. I did die cut the Thinking of You out of the black cardstock and added it to a piece of powdered sugar with the shadow layer, and I think that stands out really nice on this card. So here I'm adding the flowers. I am putting glue on the bottom middle only. I'm not adhering them flat. And I'm going to add some epoxy dots here. There's some silver epoxy dots. I think that's really pretty. Just take your finger and pop up those petals for some added dimension, and this card is now complete. I think that looks so beautiful. Look at all that dimension with those flowers. For this next card, I'm using the shadow die, and I'm just cutting a piece of the powdered sugar cardstock big enough to fit that shadow die, and I'm adding some ink again with the Midnight, and then I'm going to go into the blueberry, I think it is, and then come in with a lighter color. I think it's the pool. And then I am going to die cut the shadow layer this time out of that cardstock. So in the previous card, in the first card, I die cut the Thinking of You words out of the ombre effect paper. This time I'm doing the shadow layer, and I got a little smudge on there, so I'm kind of positioning my die so that I don't get that smudge on it. I did die cut the Thinking of You out of the powdered sugar and adhered it to that shadow layer. Here's where you see me ink blend some of the dragonflies. So in the one of the previous cards, you saw me die cut the dragonfly out of the ink blended paper, but here I'm just using my blending tool and just adding some ink to the butterfly or to the dragonfly. So I was able to put like a darker color in the middle and then a lighter color on the wings by doing it that way, and or vice versa. So here I'm using my third card base and I'm just positioning everything where I want it. I am going to be adding the 3 dragonflies to this card, and I start with the smallest dragonfly, and I make sure I put the body where it's pointing to the diagonal of the card, to the bottom diagonal of the card, as far down as I can get it, because I have a lot going on here, so I want to make sure I can fit everything. Then I can add the Thinking of You and then the other 2 dragonflies. And then I decided to go ahead and add some of these silver epoxy dots on these dragonflies. I thought that would make a nice added touch. So I add those 3. I was going to do a bigger one to the bigger dragonfly, but then I decided no, let's stick with the same size. And that completes that card. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below, and be sure to subscribe for more card making tutorials from me. Bye bye.